first, let's talk about the Great Barrier Reef, because if you listen to most of the stuff you hear around the traps, you would be led to believe that the Great Barrier Reef is in great disrepair, that it is falling apart, that it is shrinking at a rapid rate, that it will soon disappear, it will be totally bleached, there will be no Great Barrier Reef for us to enjoy in the future. Well, Bjorn Lomborg, God bless him, has put this to rest in the Wall Street Journal today. You might remember Bjorn Lomborg and his Copenhagen Consensus Centre, of which he is the president, tried to come out to this country a decade or so ago, was going to set up shop over in Western Australia, and was basically drummed out of the joint, was going to join one of the unis over there, drummed out of the joint because you couldn't possibly have someone who takes a rational view on climate change. Bjorn Lomborg is an environmentalist, but he takes a rational view on how quickly we move into these things and whether or not the stats are overblown. Now, when it comes to the Great Barrier Reef, the numbers, the tracking of the size of the reef started in 1986, and it was pretty stable in size until 2000, and then it started to decline, and it declined to half its size by 2012. But after 2012, the size of the Great Barrier Reef started to increase. And according to Bjorn Lomborg in the Wall Street Journal today, this coincided with a slight change in the way the numbers were reported. He wrote, the scientists stopped publishing their reef-wide average, perhaps because it didn't further the climate change narrative, but they continued publishing regional and sector-wide averages, making it possible for anyone to effectively recreate the reef-wide average. And that is exactly what Bjorn Lomborg has done. And he has found that in 2021, it grew to its greatest size on record. And then the same happened in 2022 and 2023 and 2024. It grew to the largest size on record. Now, this year, there has been a decline, but the reporting on this would make you believe that the Great Barrier Reef is reporting. Bjorn Lomborg pointed out some of the headlines. The BBC, Great Barrier Reef suffers worst coral decline on record. CNN says Australia's Great Barrier Reef devastated by worst coral bleaching on record. New report finds. It all sounds terribly sinister, doesn't it? But Bjorn Lomborg goes in for the kill. He writes, never mind that the reductions came off the record high of 2024 or that the large year-to-year variations are typical. One sector saw its coral cover in 2025 reach its highest level ever. The data show coral cover across the entire reef in 2025 is only, in inverted commas, the fourth highest ever recorded since systematic monitoring began. Cover across the entire reef is still higher than in 2021, which was then the biggest ever, which itself was higher than any other time prior. All the highest years are in the 2020s, yet we hear nothing but doom and gloom. I think Bjorn Lomborg has nailed this one superbly here, Joe.
Finally, a Swede I can respect.
Oh, well, indeed. But this is the thing. I mean, I know it's not wrong to say that 2025 has seen the worst decline on record, but
that's you
have to be honest about where we are. And if even with record decline, it is the fourth largest on record size of the Great Barrier Reef. We shouldn't be going around knocking and saying, oh, this thing's falling apart, because it's simply not true.
Yeah, I think that the problem is you have these sort of, and again, I'm all in on climate change. I just believe whatever I'm told. Like
a good left winger.
Like a good left winger. But again, because I'm not a scientist. I'm completely ill-equipped to actually do the sort of first-hand research myself, and so I have to just basically go by what I read in the newspaper. And the thing is, and the problem is that what happens when people do make alarmist claims, and they do, and I think they're doing it because they think, oh, this will shock governments into action. And so you see, constant sort of cherry picking of the data in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that comes, reports that come out, which, others have been very good at sort of breaking down, saying, well, actually, it doesn't quite say this. And the problem is when you do have these, alarmist views or people trying to paint the situation as being as bad as it can possibly be made to look in the hope of getting some sort of government policy change, when that conflicts with either A, the actual data as it's unpicked by, say, Bjorn Lomborg, or people's actual lived experiences, to use a popular phrase from the left, then people say, oh, well, that's it's all bollocks then. If that bit's wrong, if that bit's bollocks, then the whole thing must be bollocks. And that's exactly the disservice that people like, for example, Tim Flannery did when they said, oh, it's never going to rain again or blah, 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 blah. And, you know, we're going to be in permanent drought. And then, of course, it rains. And people like me who are, you know, believers in climate change go, well, hang on a minute. Who's actually do these guys know what they're talking about? So I think you just have to be really careful when you're doing this. And exactly as you said, you need to explain the whole thing. And if that doesn't make a picture as apocalyptic as you would like it to be, well, good.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that actually something that we should be okay about?
Exactly. And none of the alarmist predictions from climate scientists at the UN or academics, none of them have come true. We've repeatedly seen predictions of global starvation, of incredible global warming, of mass displacement.
So every war was going to be...
we're going to have tens of millions of climate refugees around the world. Well, none of it has actually happened. And actually, human beings are remarkably capable at adaptation. And so we often just invent technologies to deal with these issues. But I think the other problem here for the media with the Great Barrier Reef is so many people have bought into this narrative that climate change is going to kill us all. And they've spent so much time and energy peddling this line that now they have to find data points that actually support it. And so, you know, the headlines that they're reporting are not false. There was a decline in the Great Barrier Reef, but it just lacked all context. Now, that is an editorial choice these left-wing publications made to paint this in a way that supports their narrative. So I think it's dishonest. And as you said, Joe, it will undermine the credibility of all climate science because people will go, well, how can I trust anything you say?
And it does the bidding, knowingly or otherwise, of, you know, you say these people don't want to admit that they got it wrong, so they have to keep going down this line. But there are also lots of people who have a lot of money tied up in the climate change industry. And so it is in their interest to make sure that they keep pushing this line that the world is going to end and the Great Barrier Reef is falling apart.
People just love a catastrophe.
Because otherwise... I mean, yes, people
love a catastrophe. So fun fact...
They love a catastrophic story, but this goes beyond love. I mean, when you're at the point where you have kids coming home from school, genuinely anxious that the world is going to end before their natural life will end. We've gone beyond just, oh, well, it's a catastrophic story.
I think human beings do tell themselves stories about... I mean, up until, you know, the 1980s, we were all going to wipe ourselves out with the nuclear war, which, don't get me wrong, kids, may still happen. But the interesting thing was Bjorn Lomborg's piece talks about this data starting to be collected from 1986. 1986 was the year that I first saw the Great Barrier Reef, first visited it, went around Australia with my family. I was about 9 years old. And they were talking about how the reef was going to be absolutely destroyed and there would be nothing left. But this time it was the crown of thorns starfish that was going to do that. And that was the big bogeyman. And it was going, now, I don't know what happened to the crown of thorns starfish. Maybe the coral bleaching got rid of it as well as everything else. But again, I've been hearing reports of the death of the Great Barrier Reef for about, 40 years now. And they all seem to be greatly embarrassed.
Greatly exaggerated.
Exactly.